Okay, so if you've taken a break from the excerpt that ended with line 141, you might want to go and review the page that has lines 114 through 141 to review what we last covered in a previous video. This will be important for understanding why or what's going on here, but if you're doing this video immediately after the prior video that focused on lines 114 through 141, then let's just go ahead and continue. But otherwise, pause the video and review lines 114 through 141. All right, so we've got the foreman and the rest of the jury would rightly conclude that the philosopher must be making some kind of mistake. What sort of mistake could that be? There's only one possible answer. The philosopher must be using the phrase free will in some peculiar way of his own, which is not the way in which men, of course, remember I said this is a dated piece, so people, humans, men and women, and of course nowadays people would say that's too restrictive as well, usually use it when they wish to determine a question of moral responsibility. As I lectured in an earlier video for this lesson, you have to always, of course, pay attention to context in terms of a word being used. We know that determinism does name, and what it means to be determined names an important concept in metaphysics and the problem of free will. But again, here we see Stace using determine not in the metaphysical sense, but in terms of a critical thinking sense, in terms of deciding. So again, here in line 147, he's using some version of the word determine, not in the metaphysical sense, but in a critical thinking sense or a cognitive sense in trying to decide. A question of moral responsibility, of course, we know that gets a double arrow. That is, he must be using an incorrect definition of it as implying action not determined by causes. Here, he is using determined in the metaphysical sense. It's really important for you to keep that in mind, right? Context always matters. Here, the word determine has different meanings, different usages, different foci. Moving on with line 150. We have now collected a number of cases of actions which, in the ordinary usage of English language, would be called cases in which people have acted of their own free will. So he's talking about examples 1 through 7 that we already worked through. We should also say that in all these cases, they chose to act as they did. We should also say that they could have acted otherwise if they had chosen. For instance, Mahatma Gandhi was not compelled to fast. So what does it mean to not be compelled? I want you to go ahead and do some more definition work. So go ahead and provide a definition, okay, for compelled. Remember, no version of the word compel can be in your definition. You need to research and pick the best definition for compel given the intellectual, academic, philosophical, metaphysical context here. Remember to name the dictionary in your handwritten definition here. And remember that in the comment box, I need a direct URL to the exact definition that you are copying by hand. Do not paraphrase, do not summarize. Give me a definition from your research. In other words, not compelled to fast, he chose to do so. All right, he could have eaten if he wanted to. When Smith went out to get his lunch, he chose to do so. He could have stayed and done some more work if he wanted to. In other words, he could have made a different choice. So here he's kind of doing what? He is, and you might have to put this somewhere else depending on where you put your definition, but at least have your comments somewhere in this area in terms of what I'm about to write down. Is he's starting to extrapolate common usage for a phrase free will based on examples 1 through 7. Okay. He goes on to say, we have also collected a number of cases of the opposite kind. Okay. So you want to be able to compare these. Okay. So examples of type, we can say type A versus examples of type B. Okay. Okay, so I meant to put a bracket around these numbers here, and then a bracket around these numbers here, and then I have an arrow pointing to verses. So in other words, he's comparing and contrasting, right, different cases of actions. We have, okay, so then he says, they are cases in which men were not able to exercise their free will. Okay. So notice how he's using the word exercise. When we use exercise in everyday life, we're talking about fitness or something like that, right? Or, you know, going to the gym, having a workout or whatnot. What I'd like for you to do is, again, do some definition research and find a definition that makes the most sense given what is discussed here, right? So all the rules that I give you for dictionary research or definition research apply to this as well. All right, so they had no choice. They were compelled to do as they did. The man in the desert did not fast of his own free will. He had no choice in the matter. He was compelled to fast because there was nothing for him to eat, and so on with the other cases. It ought to be quite easy by an inspection of the cases to tell what we ordinarily mean when we say that a man did or did not exercise free will. We ought, therefore, to be able to extract from them the proper definition. When you think proper, think correct, of the term. Okay, all right. So that's where we're going to end right now. But I also want you to have give me a definition that makes the most sense for how it's being, for extract in terms of how it's being used here. Because he's talking about extracting what? A definition. You've probably heard of a dentist extracting maybe a tooth that is dead or, you know, is no longer feasible or is no longer viable, let's say. So you can extract teeth from from someone's mouth. I want you to appreciate another way of using extract in an intellectual and academic sense. So make sure that whatever definition that you find for this one makes sense with what is going on in here. What is the purpose of this reading? What is the purpose of this text? What is Stace up to? What's the point of the conversation? So that's where we're going to stop at here, and I will see you guys in class next, and not online.